question was about
the te kudasai and te mo ii desu.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's just use, for example, tabete as our example word, because that's an easy one to work with, right? So, tabete kudasai. So let's say, for example, Alicia made these delicious cookies, and she's offering them around to people. Tabete kudasai. She's offering them to people.
Yes, I'm
Okay?
Thank you.
Okay, so that's an example of the situation, right?
Everyone's free to eat cookies.
Okay?
Share
On
them.
the other hand, okay, let me continue with my example.
Sorry.
On the other hand, let's say they're just sitting there and somebody is wondering if it's okay to eat them or not. And so they ask, "Tabete mo ii desu ka?" May I eat that? Okay. And then she's giving permission that it's okay to do that. So she says, "Hai, tabete mo ii desu yo." Okay? Yeah, you can. Okay? If she decided to bring them in here just to taunt everybody and not really to share them,
No.
then she could say, what? Tabete wa ikemasen.
So wait, so the ha character is pronounced as
This is actually particle wa, yes. That's the particle wa. Okay, so tabete wa ikemasen. Okay, so if she says that, then that's when she's indicating, nope, not allowed. You're not allowed to eat that. Okay, so obviously any verb that indicates an action can work in these different forms. It's just going to be different situations. So, for example, if you change from tabete to itte, as in to go, itte kudasai, please go. So, for example, you guys just went to Morikami and you're saying how wonderful it was, so you're telling everybody else, itte kudasai, please go. You're going to enjoy it. Okay? Go to Morikami. Okay? Itte kudasai. If someone's not sure if they're allowed to go somewhere or not, itte mo ii desu ka? Am I allowed to do that? Am I allowed to go there? Hai, itte mo ii desu yo. Or, iie, itte wa ikemasen. You're not allowed to go. So, you see how that works? A good, easy one to work with sometimes is just the verb suru. Shite kudasai. Please do whatever it is. Shite mo ii desu ka? Is it okay to do whatever? Hai, shite mo ii desu. Or, iie, shite wa ikemasen. No, you're not allowed to do that. Right? So, just using shite, suru, that verb is a very easy example to work with because it could be doing anything. Right? Am I allowed to do this? Yes, you're allowed to do that. No, you're not allowed to do that. Or please do that, whatever it is. Okay? But I like using taberu because it's a little bit more concrete. People can picture in their head the different scenarios we're talking about. Okay, so that's how those 4 different scenarios work. Notice that I purposely put ka in a different color so you can see that you can drop it when it's the answer rather than the question.
so
right?
the ka acts as the question mark.
Exactly. So, tabete mo ii desu ka? May I eat that? Hai, tabete mo ii desu. And very often there will be a yo on the end just because if you're giving somebody permission, it doesn't hurt to be a little bit more emphatic about it to make sure they know that you're not just grudgingly giving permission. You're really intending that, yes, they should
Take it.
go ahead and do it.
So
Yeah.
the yo is straightforward.
Yeah, it's emphatic.
Take
okay?
The particle wa, do you pronounce that?
Yes, you pronounce it as wa, not ha. Tabete wa ikemasen.
Okay, because I was getting confused on that.
Okay? It helps sometimes to break this down. Okay? Ikeru, ikemasen, ikemasu. These are all a variant of iku, to go. So think about ikeru as being like able to go, okay? And think about it as like in slang, you can say, oh, that won't fly. That's not good, right?
Nabra.
It's a similar sort of idiom, okay? It doesn't necessarily mean literally you can't go there, but it's kind of a slang idiomatic type of structure that's something close to, yeah, don't do that, okay? So if you think about it that way, if you break it apart, what are you saying not to do? Whatever this verb is, okay? And the wa particle is basically letting you treat the verb that you're talking about as the topic that you're not supposed to do, okay? Now this may not be a historically accurate, literal translation, but it's a very understandable way to break it down, okay? Because it is really a phrase rather than a single vocabulary word, right? You can do something similar with this. We all know the phrase "ides," right? "Ides" means
Yes.
it's good, right? It's
Good,
good.
bro.
"Ides." Okay? So basically, now don't take this too literally. The mo usually means also. Okay? Now obviously we're not necessarily comparing that it's okay to do this and it's also okay to do that. It's not meant to be taken that literally, but mo is also something that marks a topic or a subject of a sentence a lot of the time, right? So what is good? This verb is good. It's okay to do this verb. Does that make sense? Okay. So, and then of course adding ka, you're asking, is it okay to do this verb? Right? So those breakdowns, I think, help people to understand what you're doing with these phrases, because these long multisyllabic phrases sometimes are intimidating if you're trying to memorize them as just a set phrase. But if you can break it apart and see, okay, there are parts of this that I actually already do know, then it's not quite so difficult to learn. Okay? And then, of course, everybody who's ever watched anime, ever, has heard kudasai. Am I right? Okay, so how many people have heard matte kudasai?
Yeah.
Or chotto matte?
Yep.
Okay? Probably the most commonly heard phrase for people who have never really studied Japanese, outside of the ones that have made it into English, like company names. Right? So, chotto matte, that te on the end of matte is this te form. Break it down. Matte, right?
Please wait.
Matte is wait. What's the matsu? Exactly. The dictionary form is matsu. Matsu, matte, right? Matsu is one of the verbs that you guys have learned. And was it this chapter or the last chapter? This chapter. So
How about
matsu means to wait.
Motsu.
Motsu, let's not confuse them.
Yeah.
Is motsu in this chapter yet? I don't think so.
No.
Yeah, it is.
It
It
is?
is motsu?
To
Okay.
carry.
Motsu, to carry,
Don't
yes.
get, yeah. don't
So,
get confused.
motsu and matsu. Motsu, matsu. Don't let them get confused, okay? Motsu, and this is a situation where if they were teaching the kanji, it would actually be helpful because motsu has this radical. Who remembers this radical from when we looked at radicals? How do you say something?
Oh, I vaguely remember. I remember more the one next to it that's used in time.
It's like a-
Right, yeah, it looks like
Yeah, the soil and
the
Soil of the clock.
and inch, yeah.
Or like
You
T.
remember what that one means?
Yeah, that was,
This hand?
this is
This
the
side?
carry, yeah.
Yeah, it's, well,
What?
this character,
Is
this
this,
radical, who remembers what that radical means? The actual radical?
Was it in?
No. This
What?
part's inch. This piece. is,
Hat?
Hand?
Ah.
that's the full form, that's the
Oh.
radical form, hand.
Oh.
And what do you use if you're carrying something? Your hand. It makes sense, right? This is a good example of a kanji that actually has some sense to it, right? The radical part actually gives you a clue about meaning. The other part presumably was a pronunciation component in ancient Chinese. It's not much help anymore. But the radical is helpful, right? As opposed to matsu, which, to wait, if I'm remembering it correctly, is it this kanji?
Oh, smash.
So, there's your pronunciation cue. They're similar sounds, yes? Motsu, matsu. They both have the same left side, right?
Right side.
Now, let's say you're waiting for somebody. How does this relate to waiting? Anybody know?
Going.
Hmm?
That's part of to go.
Yeah, it's part of to go.
Like little two people, like
Yes,
walking or
this
something.
by itself means one person, this means two people. So let's say two of you are standing around waiting because your third friend that's supposed to meet you is late. Okay, so can you imagine that, picture that? That's a good image to help yourself remember the kanji for matsu. Okay? So these two kanji aren't actually required in this chapter, but they're useful because you can actually look at it and say, oh, yeah, that one's got the hand radical. That must be the one that means to carry. The other one, two people standing around, waiting. Okay? So that's actually a way to help yourself remember those. Hi.
Well, I think you know that if we do not have
I just want
the,
to see which chapter.
I don't know how it's called.
If you don't have the,
It's on 105.
Yeah, the first one.
Yeah, okay,
No, yeah, in the first one, I'm saying that.
oh yeah, if you don't,
One,
oh yeah, if you just
Yeah.
have one person instead of
right,
two.
right, that's different
Yeah,
character.
yeah, that's a different character, yeah.
That's samurai.
Yes, okay, yeah, it is samurai, I forgot. Yeah,
So, yeah, don't get confused.
yeah, yeah, so it's very important that you have two people waiting. Because if you only have one person waiting, it's actually samurai.
Wait, so, okay, so the samurai has,
Yeah, the red is samurai. You add one extra line and that turns it to matsu.
Well, I've seen a lot of, like, runners make mistakes.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank
So,
you for pointing that out.
Samurai 2? That doesn't make sense. Samurai
Yeah.
2.
unless
Yeah,
it's the title of the movie.
Yeah, what you guys are saying is matsu, but like because
Right.
you guys forget the first one.
oh,
so
okay, yeah, some people forget this black
Yeah.
line.
We
and just
cannot
write
read
the verbatim.
samurai 2.
Yeah, yeah, that, with that doesn't make any
Yeah,
sense
right,
whatsoever.
right.
Wait, what does
Yeah.
matsu mean again?
Matsu is to wait.
Okay, like
So,
matsu.
and the easy way to remember that is if you already know the phrase matte, as in chotto matte, or matte kudasai, then you can reverse engineer it to get the dictionary for matsu.
I'm sorry, kanji is crazy.
Yeah.
Just little.
Yeah, it's not your fault. You didn't invent it all.
You cannot change it.
So, but my point that I was getting to is matte kudasai is a way, because it's a phrase you've already heard, it's already familiar, it's a way to help yourself remember what is going on here. Because the kudasai, when you add it, is like making it polite. It's a please. Okay? But think about it, even in English, if you're being polite to somebody, you can say, please wait. If you're talking to your best friend, wait! Right? You don't have to always add please necessarily. Same thing is true in Japanese. If you drop the kudasai, it's a very casual, wait! Matte! Hold up a sec. Okay? But if you say matte kudasai, that's much politer. Hey.
I just felt I should mention that, since we're talking about phrases you commonly hear,
Yeah.
that it's important when you're saying the mo ii desu ka,
Yeah.
not to say mo ii desu ka, like mo ii, like that type of expression.
Oh, yeah.
That's not at all similar. That's why, I don't know,
Yeah.
like, I just
Yeah,
figured,
if you put too much emphasis on the mo
well, it's like mo,
phrase,
mo, like mo, yeah.
mo, okay, yeah, well, mo with the elongated vowel is more like also or already in this case. It's more like already, yeah, not also. Mo is already, is also, but
Like,
mo ii desu is like, it's enough already.
yeah, and not like
Like,
good.
leave me
not
alone
like,
if
oh,
it's too much.
yeah.
Mo ii desu. Yeah,
But yeah,
that's
it's
a
only
completely
more
different
easier,
structure.
or like, we'll start
Yeah.
begin from more.
Yeah,
So the conjugation, like what we are learning,
yeah.
we never use the like, yeah, 食べてもいいですか?
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying?
yeah, you wouldn't say that in
Yeah,
context,
if you
but
wanna say already, yeah,
in
that's
terms
the
of
from
pronunciation,
more.
I think your point is that you need to be careful of pronunciation
Yeah,
here.
it wasn't a context problem. It's
It's a
like,
pronunciation
make sure-
issue. Yeah, Americans sometimes struggle with how to pronounce the difference between a short vowel and a long vowel in Japanese. And yeah, if you put too much strength and emphasis on this, it's going to end up sounding more like mo instead of mo. The solution is to slur these together. Just like in English, we tend to connect our syllables even if they don't necessarily belong in the same word. So, for example, if you're telling somebody, I don't know, that's my cat's toy. That's my cat's toy. You run them together, right? Or even more likely when it's a consonant-ending word followed by a vowel-starting word, you know? I can't think of a good example right now, but my point is you slur things together when you're speaking English, right? You don't enunciate every word separately, right? Japanese is the same, so 食べてもいいです. You run this whole thing together more smoothly and then you don't have that problem. 食べてもいいですか? 食べてもいいです. Hey.
I read something, I downloaded an app on Learning Japanese once, and one of the introductory paragraphs said that the way it verbalizes in your vocal cords, English has something like 800 distinct sounds that your throat makes when you speak, whereas languages like Japanese, where they use syllables instead of like blurring together sounds, only have like 100 or 200,
Okay.
where like English has like 800 or 900.
Yeah. Yeah, there's more,
Because where like Japanese has very specific sounds, we just kind of like blah, 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 blah,
yeah,
blah.
we
We're like
have a
the-
lot more,
You can still understand as
Yeah.
we slur
We-
blur things together.
we slur stuff, we blur stuff, we have a lot of different nuanced vowels that might all get written with the same letter, but they don't sound the same.
Yeah.
And Japanese is
And there
more
are
cut and
other-
dry, that if it's written ah, it's pronounced ah. You can't really do anything different with ah, it's always ah.
Right, and there's
Right.
other languages like it, but English is like a lot of different
Right.
areas that have a lot of different sounds for English, like British
Right.
English and
Yeah.
Australian English and
Yeah.
American English.
Yeah, Chinese is more like that, it
Yeah.
varies from place to place.
Yeah, like a
greatly.
pronunciation symbol, like
Yeah,
people say in English, like A, E, like I practice a lot, like R, like
Yeah.
it's not A.
right,
Like A, E or something.
yeah,
I
you're
forgot.
thinking about the schwa, that's, no.
Yeah,
that's,
how do
well,
you,
how do you
have
write
the
that thing? I can't
between-
remember how to write the schwa
between
symbol.
A and A.
Yeah.
The upside down
like,
E?
it's like,
Yeah, the upside down E thing, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, it's an,
that's
it's an
English sound.
Yeah, the,
Yeah,
like,
and Japanese doesn't have that.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
right.
And that's one of those sounds that
Yeah.
we often write it with an A, but the letter A in English can be ah, or or a,
Right,
or
right.
a,
Right.
you know.
I think like kind of what she's getting at is like the OUGH sound is
Yeah.
like like ludicrous, like murder
Yeah,
for
they're-
anyone that doesn't get it, especially
Because
when
it
you're
can be
learning
pronounced
English.
50 different
Yeah,
ways,
like
yeah.
through, tough, though. Like,
Yeah, there are like 5 or 6 different pronunciations for that, whereas Japanese basically,
Actually have like different pronunciations.
yeah, Japanese basically, if you can spell it, you can pronounce it. Because it's very phonetic in its spelling in modern Japanese. So if you've got the spelling correct, you can sound it out and pronounce it.
And English is terrible.
And English isn't like that.
English is awful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Have you seen fish? Like the fish from spelling in English?
Yes.
Okay, let's get back to TEF forms though. We don't have a lot of time tonight. Okay, so are there questions about TEF forms specifically? Any questions about any of the TEF form structures that are being taught here? Notice that these are not the only things you can do with TEF form. These are just a few of the things you can do with TEF form, okay? One more that they do introduce in this chapter is the concept of listing activities. Very often they're in chronological order, but it is also sometimes possible that you're just doing 2 things simultaneously and listing both of those. So for example, let's say you're telling somebody about your schedule for tomorrow. And you're going to tell them that first you're going to eat breakfast and then you're going to come to school. Okay? So you could say, asa gohan o tabete, and then gakko ni kimasu. Right? So you can, okay, so you can have 2 phrases or more. And TEF forms are allowing you to connect, I'm going to do this and then that. Okay, so, and it doesn't have to be just 2. If you want to list your whole schedule for the day all in one really, really long sentence, I don't recommend it, but it is possible. Asa gohan o tabete, gakko ni kite, toshokan de benkyou shite, testo totte, uchi ni kaerimasu. You know, it's possible to put all that together in one long string. Hi.
Is there any like marker like we have and, or is it just?
Te is the marker.
That is the, okay.
And usually there'll be a comma if you're
Okay.
listing a
That's
sequence of events like that. Yeah. And you'll note that there's no such thing as a no run-on sentence rule in Japanese.
Hey, I like that.
You
I like
can
run-on
make it
sentences.
as long as you want.
I like run-on. I like run-on sentences.
On and on and
Yeah.
on and
I
on.
like
Yeah, I
that.
mean, some Japanese authors are actually famous for ridiculously long sentences. I'm thinking about Oe Konzaburo in particular.
Wait, let me guess. Sentence is wrong for like 2 or 3
I
pages.
just don't like sentences.
No, not that one, but a whole paragraph. Yeah. And yeah, translating those is interesting. We did some of that in grad school.
That would have been a nightmare.
I mean, I don't like
Yeah,
these.
so, but the point is that this is one of the ways that that can happen, that you can list a series of several activities. So a lot of people, before they get to lesson 6 in this class, they want to make more complex sentences. You know, lesson 1, lesson 2, you're doing gakusei desu, 21 sai desu, you know, blah blah desu, blah blah desu, and you feel like you're saying all these short, choppy little sentences that sound like a kindergartner would put together. And people get frustrated. I want to say something that sounds a little bit more mature, a little bit more sophisticated. Ta-da! You can now group several different activities. You can have several different clauses to a sentence if you want to. Okay? And there will be other ways to do other fun ways of making the sentence more complicated later, but this is something that you can do now. Another thing that you can do now is give both a situation and an explanation for that situation, kara. Did people have questions about kara?
the word kara at the end means because. So because I did this.
Yeah, but translating it as because creates some problems with translation in both directions because the word order is so different from English. So what I usually like to tell people, and this is something that a student of mine came up with a few years ago, is when you've got kara at the end of the second sentence like this, they translate it as that's why.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
That's the reason.
So,
That's why.
That's why.
so for example, 今晩勉強します。明日テストがありますから。Make sense? Tonight I'm going to study. Tomorrow I have a test. That's why. Okay, so you're giving your explanation after.
Oh,
This is what the textbook is teaching first. They're not teaching it the other way around yet.
yeah, well, I mean, like, that's why, is that correct
Yeah.
grammar in English? What you
It's
say?
slang. It's not proper,
Okay.
but it's something that Americans can understand. Okay, so you can do, you know, something like,
So this is what we're being taught how to use, but
you
this is
know,
also,
Yeah.
you know,
but this says we
Kyo.
won't be learning this until
We're showing kara, right?
6.
yeah. So you can say, for example, 今日たくさん寝ます. Today I'm going to sleep a lot. 昨日
Yes.
寝ませんでしたから. Yesterday I didn't sleep. That's why. You know?
Yeah.
Stuff like that. Okay, you can put together these sentences. Now they're showing it to you in this order. Some of you may be familiar with the fact that in Japanese it often goes the other way around, where the kara actually is in the middle between the two sentences when you put the explanation first and then the situation. That is going to actually be taught in a later lesson, so we're not going to get into it right
It's at the
now.
bottom of the page.
But
as
they
an example.
explain it briefly at the bottom of the page.
Yeah.
When kara is in the center between the two clauses instead of on the end, I usually have people translate it as therefore, because you're giving the explanation before instead of after.
That's why. it's
Okay,
different.
so let me give you examples. So let's use that, there's a test tomorrow, therefore I'm going to study tonight. So if you're doing the style that's in this chapter, you could say, 今日, let me use kanji. We know the kanji for 今日 now. What is it? 今日勉強します. Okay. Ashita, by the way, looks like this. Ashita, testo ga arimasu kara. Okay? 今日勉強します. Ashita, testo ga arimasu kara. Okay? If you reverse them, you would actually do this whole sentence like this. Ashita testo ga arimasu kara, comma, 今日, let me off the kanji again. 今日 Okay, so do you see how the kara stays in the same position in relation to what it's explaining, yes? But this other sentence that they're putting at the beginning here, it ends up coming all the way over to here to the end, and instead of being two separate sentences, they're connected by a comma. They're all one sentence when it's this other way. And that's why when it's this one, I translate this as that's why. Okay, but when it's here, tomorrow there's going to be a test, therefore today I will study.
What if that's why still work? Like, that's why I'm
That's
studying.
why today I'm gonna study.
Yeah,
Yeah, it could.
or that's why I'm studying today, or something like that.
Yeah. So
Depends on
it
context.
could, yeah, in context sometimes that'll work, but this also kind of helps to remind yourself that you're working with a different word order in Japanese.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, but I think the reason they teach this one first is there's a sort of perception that this is closer to the way English would state it, that we would more likely say, I'm going to study today because there's a test tomorrow, that's why. But we would put a because in the middle,
I
right?
feel like the second one feels more natural.
Yeah, this one is actually probably more natural, more traditional in Japanese. This is actually, according to teachers that I worked with years ago, this was considered to be more of slang, at least back in the day. It was considered almost like a copy or an imitation of what was perceived as a more Western way of putting things. And it was almost like it was the hip thing to do when I was in college for Japanese speakers to reverse some of their sentences like that because they thought it sounded cool. I don't know if it's still the case or not, but back then, that was maybe because it was still a relatively new thing to do with the language 20 years ago, you know.
What do you use for dakara? That you have that
That's
in
like
the
deskara.
vocab.
Yeah, dakara is like deskara, okay? Da is the casual version of des, okay? They are equivalent in meaning in the same way that iku and ikimasu are equivalent in meaning, okay? Da is the short form, the casual form, sort of like the dictionary form, if you want to call this having a dictionary form. And des is the more formal one. So des kara is like saying something is therefore, or is that's why X, okay? And dakara is the same exact meaning, just more casual. Okay?
Well, how about node? Node is.
Node is a little more formal usually, and it's similar to
That's
kara.
not in Genki 1,
It's in,
Genki 2.
yeah, it's in second semester. They teach node.
So in the
You're not gonna teach.
latter half
Yeah.
or thinking,
Yeah, the second half of this book, when we take, so if we're all doing this again next semester, then that's when you're going to get node.
You,
Okay?
you don't teach Dale, do you? At all?
Which?
Dale, like hopefully not, right? No.
No.
They all. I don't know what other.
That's very
Yeah,
slang.
no, it's like super. They usually
Yeah.
use it if it's like really like insulting. Usually.
It's like
Okay.
gangsta talk.
Okay, let's just go back to
Yeah,
Mashoka
Mashoka.
real quick. That's the only other grammar structure in this lesson. This is a slight variation on the Mashoka that you already have. Okay? You guys remember, like, ikimashou, let's go, right? Ikimashouka, shall we go? Right? But what if the thing that I'm saying let's do is actually something that I'm going to do for you? Putting it in the mashoka structure is basically like saying, shall I do that for you? Why don't you let me do that for you? So it's not going to be used with some of the verbs that imply doing something together. Like, it's not likely to be for ikimashouka. Is more likely to be, let's go together. Shall we go together? But let's say you're struggling with something, and I'm offering to help you with it. Tetsudaimashou ka? Shall I help you? It's you could almost translate it as let's help you, but that doesn't make any sense in English, right? It's closer to can I help you? May I help you? You know, something like that. One of the examples in the book is mochimashou ka? Mochu. Motsu. Mochimasu. Remember we were just talking about mochimasu, to carry? So if you see somebody holding like 5 cake boxes in a sack, you know, mochimashou ka? mochimashouka, like, let me help you with those, right? So you might take like the top 3 off the top so that they're only carrying the 2 heaviest ones that were on the bottom and you're carrying the 3 lighter ones from the top of the stack. You know, or like in Japanese subways, it's very common to, you know, see somebody who's seated and somebody who's standing, because it's a standing room only train, like it often is, and they've got packages. And the person sitting right there in front of them will say, mochimashouka, and hold that person's packages for them so that person can just focus on keeping their balance when the train's moving. And then when it's time for them to get off, they'll take their packages back and get off the train. That's a pretty common courtesy that you see happen in Japan. Yeah. I used to see that happen and participate in that quite often.
Did you say that?
Yeah,
Sherry?
sure.
And what was the reaction of the Japanese people?
Oh,
They're like, oh.
After they got done dropping their jaws about the fact that I was a gaijin who could speak Japanese,
Uh-huh.
then they would be like, okay. But yeah, in Tokyo, people aren't as shocked by it, but when I lived in Hachiman, on the rare occasions that I was actually on public transit, yeah, people were not expecting that from
Well,
somebody who looked like me.
I can explain the
Yeah.
really convenient technique. Okay, when you guys went to Japan, like
Yeah.
you know, you guys have lots of trouble between like station.
Uh-huh.
I mean, like you know, like the Japanese translation system is like a spider catch. You know, like
Yeah,
around
spider
the
web.
Tokyo,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
really
That was
complicated.
Oh, yeah.
It's-
Then when you change the train, you have to talk with, you know, when you guys have questions, you guys have to talk, you know, with,
to ask
people,
for help,
yeah.
to get
But-
directions.
it's really, they speak really complicated, super formal Japanese, so
Yeah.
just speak English super fast and you can go anywhere, you know, like,
Yeah.
because they cannot speak well, so that's called gaijin smash. Yeah, that's like, hey, I have a question, blah, 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 and they're like, oh, okay, let's go, 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 go.
Yeah.
Then you don't have to pay the, I mean, like, it's technique though, you know, if
Oh, I
when
see,
you
for
don't
getting
know.
through the turnstile?
Yeah, right. Like, technically,
Yeah.
technically you guys have to proper, like, you know, the
So
transport.
sometimes, yeah, basically, I think what you're saying is,
It's really
if you're
smash.
lost, you can ask somebody for help and they'll help you to the point of like letting you through without asking you to pay because it's too complicated for them to try to figure out how to tell you how much you owe.
Yeah, right.
Because if you're making out that you don't speak any Japanese.
Yeah. Have you done?
No.
Yeah.
You-
I can do it here.
Yeah, but no, for me, I was working on learning the language and I was very proud of the fact that I could speak it. So yeah, it would not have occurred to me to try that.
I've seen it, my
Yeah.
American friend.
So anyway, so are there questions about the grammar now?
I have a question.
Hi.
On the homework, it
Uh-huh.
says, how do you say no food is allowed?
Ah, okay, so how would you say no food is allowed?
I put tabemono wa arimasen, but I don't think.
Yeah, that tabemono wa arimasen would be there is no food.
Okay,
Okay, but if you're saying you're not allowed to eat in here,
right.
how would you put that together?
Tabemono
Was that last Thursday?
No, this
This
Thursday. This Thursday.
Tabete wa ikemasen.
There you go. Tabete wa ikemasen. You don't actually even have to say the food part, just no eating. Tabete wa ikemasen. That's what they're looking for there. Tabete wa ikemasen.
はい、トイレはどこですか？
Oh,
トイレはどこですか？
Oh, yeah. Who can say it?
sensei, what's it?
どこで？
トイレはどこですか？
Like that? Number 4. Number
あそこです。あそこです。
Or
外にあります。いや、外じゃない。この廊下の左の方。外に出る前にあります。
Sensei.
I was trying to think of go out to the left, I couldn't think of
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. このロープを通って左にあります。
Right. You can't tell me you're right.
No,
Not left. Not
I
right.
need that.
Since my question is for this part, yes. The first half is about you and your friend in your apartment, but here's to your teacher in the class. For the teacher in the class, is it much more strict, but with your friend it's much more formal? Like,
Okay,
yeah.
let's look at that together. So, Femoides. Okay, so the question was 58 ページ in the workbook. 58ページ Femoides. So one section is asking if it's okay to do things at your friend's apartment, and the other one is asking your teacher in class. So the question was whether or not it would be more formal asking the teacher these questions as opposed to your friend at his or her apartment. Technically, yes, you should be more formal with your teacher, but we haven't really learned the casual style of doing these questions yet. So for now, they're all going to be formal. For now.
Okay, so they're all formal.
Yeah, for now they're all formal because we're not learning the casual structure version of Femoides until later. Okay, so if you already know how to do the casual, that's okay, but for the class, I'm assuming that most of you are going to be doing them formally the whole way down. Okay. If there are no other grammar questions, I want to give you guys time to work in partners and in pairs to do some of the dialogue exercises, the 練習。はい。
We use しましょう instead of やりましょう。
いいですよ。いつでもどっちでもいいでしょ。なんとかしましょう、なんとかやりましょう。意味は同じでしょ。Okay. じゃあパートナーと一緒に練習してください。Okay. Can everybody try to find a partner they haven't worked with yet?
I have the version anyway.
I work with Amanda.
Okay,
I work with Amanda.
I think she also hasn't worked
Have
with
it in
him.
English.
Have you worked with Cody before?
Yeah.
Oh, you guys haven't worked together either? Okay, that's fine too.
You can share them with
Like
them
the
if they
first
want.
half, I think we did, but then we haven't since.
That's fine too. We haven't worked together in a long time.
I mean, I would.
That's no easy.
Wait, is this in the workbook or the text? Workbook or text?
The text with the pair work stuff.
Let's all work over here.
Non-paging.
Okay.
Okay.
That's something I'm gonna have an issue with. It's like,
Knowing which
I think,
pronunciation
I mean,
to
like,
use
for the most
something.
part, I'm pretty good at figuring out something doesn't sound quite right, but like, it's still one of those things.
With Japanese, you can have some.
And you're giving yourself examples.
What is the P?
Oh,
that's
none.
Yeah, I know those just based on how this isn't quite.
No, I'm saying that.
Yeah. Basically, anytime you've got any measure word following it, it's always going to be non with any measure word. Nani is not standalone except for a few exceptions. Nani is what nationality, as opposed to non is me, which is how many people. So that's how they make that distinction. Yeah, none is nationality. None is how many people in whatever we're talking about.
How about those でもいいですか?
But other than that, almost all